Hello and welcome back to the Karma Stories podcast. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today I have 4 stories for you from the Tales from Tech Support subreddit. The Karma Stories podcast is published to all major podcasting platforms, and you can also read along on YouTube under our @Karma Stories podcast handle. Alright, on to the stories, let's jump right in. This story comes to us from Sir Lenneth. Tales from an IT expert. Heya, Lenneth here. I've spent the last 3 years at an IT service house. From customer support over network management, client implementation, and training to server integration and building full networks ground up, I've seen a lot of IT, most of the time while interacting with the customer. During this time, I've experienced a lot of weird things which I want to share with you. 1. Not a single incident, but a common theme when interacting with customers via email or phone. I'm not sure how support is handled in other companies, so I'll just tell you how it worked at the one I've been working at. We have support hotlines and support mailboxes. If a customer needs something to be fixed, they call the hotline or write an email to our automated support mailbox. Their ticket then shows up in all first and second level support employees. In general, an available first level technician assigns the ticket to themselves and begins working on it, most of the time by calling back and asking a few questions about the problem. Due to how this works, customers may get different technicians for every ticket, or even multiple technicians on the same ticket in some cases. This system ensures that new tickets are always worked at as soon as one technician is available, but customers love to have a favorite technician. As soon as they're contacted by a technician, some customers save this one technician's email address and or phone number. Their issue is resolved and they're happy about their technician's work, but then the problem begins. The next time they want to open a ticket, they call this one technician whose contact information they've saved. Of course, this one specific technician may be unavailable, sick, at an appointment with another customer, not even working right now, or even left the company. This is even worse with mails. The customer writes an email and is waiting for a response in our promised 8-hour respond time. But by trying to reach a technician, they're bypassing all ticket systems. So if the technician isn't available, no one else knows about the customer's issue. And making things worse, if the technician is available and starts working on this issue with no active ticket, the customer is pretty much receiving free support from us. Big no-go. Because of this, we've introduced a zero tolerance policy with those cases. First contact is to be made via the official support hotlines. Support mails received in technician's mailbox are forwarded to support, causing additional processing time. And no matter how often we try to explain this thing to our customers, they still love to have favorite technicians. 2. Most of our customers are medical facilities of some sort, mainly rest homes for old people. And during my 3 years work, I've been at a lot of them. This one time, I was working in a rest home for old people, replacing their out-of-date fire alarm system. Most of the time when we do work like this, the places aren't closed, so we naturally come into contact with the nurses and their residents. At this facility, the nurses and other staff of the place were extremely friendly to us. They offered us a room in the basement to store our stuff, another room with couches and furnished like your old people living room for breaks, and even allowed us to get to their canteen and get food for free at lunchtime. We got the same food the residents got and usually took our meals to the living room that was provided to us. One day, as I was standing in line to get my food, one of their residents approached me with an expression somewhere between "please help me" and "where am I?" I have some experience with dementia and Alzheimer's and could tell that this guy had something in that spectrum just from the look he gave me. As he came into reach, he grabbed my arm with a strength you'd not expect from a man of his age and began to hastily tell me to bring him to his car. He kept going, saying that he was told to eat his meal, after which someone picks him up and gets him home. For a moment, I was just as confused as he was, given I was clearly wearing my work pants and even the jacket with the name of our company. Then I remembered some stories my sister told me, who's coincidentally working as a nurse for dementia patients. I kept calm and put my plate away, turning to the old man and made my biggest mistake of that day. I tried to explain to him that I'm just a technician and that he should get one of the nurses. Of course, he was too far away to understand what I'm saying and kept asking me about the car that's supposed to get him and that I should bring him there. We kept going back and forth like this for a moment until another resident, an old lady with all her mental capacity intact, approached us and handled the situation much better than I did. She began asking him about the meal he mentioned, taking his hand and leading him back to where he came from. I didn't see how their situation ended, but from how she managed him, I guess it was much better than my experience. 3. This guy. Yes, my fellow IT engineers, I'm talking about that guy. This one customer. He's an aged man, somewhere between his late 50s to mid 60s. He's the head of some industrial company he built himself, which was going extremely well for some time. But stagnation in both technical interest and modernizing their systems is slowly degenerating their company for years. He's noticing losses in productivity, but is calling his employees to be the reason for this. After a lot of arguing, he's hiring your IT company to help him build a more modern, stable, and secure system, which is easier said than done, given he has one server which provides all critical infrastructure for his company. And this server has no backups, and it runs on a 12-year-old OS with no manufacturer support, and no firewall runs on it because of this. Despite this, he's the most relaxed man regarding his network, while somehow being the most hastily man you've ever seen, if things don't work at the very first try. He's constantly forgetting admin passwords, so he resets them without informing his IT service provider. He's ordering a state-of-the-art cloud-based network system which would fix all of his problems just to cancel it last second because he wants his servers on-premise, in his own house. He's not seeing the writing on the wall, even after his extremely outdated server is running on already borrowed time, with your technicians and IT experts doing whatever they can to keep it going for just another week, every week, for 2 years. He's constantly restarting this server, no matter how often you beg him not to, because you can't guarantee the server to properly start up anymore. And he has a favorite technician, always sending his mails to this one guy, no matter how often you try to make him take the official support route. OP added an edit down below these. It says, edit, a bit more information for story 1 after reading some comments. We never give out our private contact data. Even giving out our personal business data is quite unusual. But when working in a 5-story building with the customer's own technician running from place to place, people tend to give out their business mobile number for easy communication. Also, we always give our names to all emails we write, as one does. That's how information is passed to customers and begins to spread. Also, we have an online ticket system where customers can make their own tickets, but only a handful of them actually use it. Most prefer a more personal approach and call us. But giving you all the benefit of the doubt, we're a quite small and relatively new company, so there's absolutely some stuff that could be done better on our side. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Ford Perfect. It says, Number 1 sounds like a stupid way to run a help desk. I've worked in a fair number of places over the years and seen a few different ways used, but I've never seen that one before. Number 2 could have gone worse. Weird stuff happens when people's brains stop working properly. Number 3, good luck. I hope your company has a good contract and a good lawyer for when his crap falls over and he blames you for all his mistakes. Regarding part number 2, I've had some experience with dementia and Alzheimer's myself, and there are ways that you can deal with it to make the situation easier both on you, but also on the person. Being negative, refuting what they say, or even just saying no really does not work. So you want to respond to them in as positive a way as possible. So when they're saying they want you to take them out to their car, you could just say to them, sure, I'll help you find somebody who could take you out to your car, and then assist them with getting to a nurse. On the personal side, I remember going to a family get-together and my grandmother was there who had severe Alzheimer's. She couldn't remember something for more than a few seconds, My grandmother would keep on asking who my daughter belonged to, looking at my cousins and looking at me. We answered quite a few times explaining that she was mine, but I think my cousin had had enough at one point because when she was asked directly if my daughter was hers, she goes, yep, she's mine, and just moved on with the conversation. This story comes to us from the Colonel Clink. If you told me there was a charge, I wouldn't have bothered. They brought in a computer with a blue screen of death problem and apparently completely ignoring the signage everywhere, including on the form he signed to drop it off, stating there would be a minimum cost. Was furious there was actually a charge to fix his computer upon his return. You're a bunch of scam artists. You can't expect people to see and read everything. I bet you don't read the terms and conditions all the time either, do you? You should have told me verbally. Funnily enough though, I had only literally just fixed it. It was a corrupt file which you just renamed and Windows fixed with the scan disk on restart. So the computer was on the bench and actually still on. The dude was still furious and continued to loudly declare statements like, "This isn't right. If I'd known there was a charge, I wouldn't have bothered." Although he was really starting to piss me off, I suddenly realized I could be maliciously compliant. So I calmly told the butthole that I would see what I could do and went into the workshop, straight to his computer, and simply renamed the restored and fixed version and reverted to the original corrupt file. I then turned the computer off, unplugged it, and brought it out a short while later. "There's no way I'm paying for it though," he said as soon as I came out with it. "My apologies for the misunderstanding. Here's your computer back, and there is no charge," I said smugly, smiling happily. "That's darn right there isn't, but you fixed it, right?" Well, it was fixed, but you made it clear you had no intention of paying anything to fix the computer. He was about to continue his rant when I just cut him off and continued. "It's an honest mistake. You somehow managed to completely miss all the signs trying to make it clear we're a business, and you simply don't understand that a business needs to charge people for their services to stay open. So, in accordance with your wishes, I've reverted my work and I'm giving it back to you in the state you brought it in, which has incurred you no charge." "Yeah, but for this inconvenience, I expect it to be fixed. You're telling me it's still broken?" "Well, yes. As you literally just made clear, quite belligerently, you didn't want to spend any money on this computer to fix it. I've literally done what you wanted." This confused him for a moment, and I could see he was about to simply continue his tantrum until he got his way, before I again cut him off. Unless you're the scam artist and never intended to pay for the repair, this is exactly what you wanted. We have literally no more reason to continue this discussion unless you intend to pay for our services to have the computer fixed. I could see he was still angry and was probably going to continue to be a butthole, but thankfully the phone rang and I picked it up. He then took the computer and, cursing under his breath, left the store, only to have his wife drop it off to be repaired at cost the next day. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called HMS Slarty Bartfast. It says, "Next time he comes in, look him straight in the eye and state, as you have previously stated, you need to be told everything. We charge X per minute to read to you. Take out your phone and get the timer set." The best part of this whole story is honestly right at the end, where the wife brings the computer back in the next day and pays for it to be fixed. You just know she had it out with him when he came back with the computer and it still didn't work. This story comes to us from Patient Squash 86. "I switched to the new version of the software and now it keeps failing. I used to do tech support for a product that involved a piece of software that has to run a complex flow with multiple interlinked steps. The way this works is that the user launches an umbrella control job, and this in turn spawns multiple interlinked jobs to the compute grid in the correct sequence. If any of the spawned jobs fail, the whole thing fails. So one day, I get one of the engineers at customer company complaining that they have switched to the new version of our software, and the flow now always fails to complete. As usual, I ask for the log files, and I quickly determine that some of the spawned jobs are being terminated, as if by Control-C. This is a Linux environment all the way. Now, I know this customer has a compute grid managed by LSF where a job spawned to the grid cannot exceed the job requirements, memory usage, number of CPUs, runtime, etc. specified by the grid submit command, bsub in this case, as they are using LSF. Otherwise, the job in question will get killed automatically by the grid engine, no exceptions. So obviously first thing, as there didn't seem any other cause for the job failing, I asked the user to check their grid submission parameters. After some back and forth, they tell me that these are not the problem, that they have increased all the resource requirements and the flow keeps failing, roughly at the same point, so it must be a problem with our software. Not quite convinced of this, I asked them to send me the job status from the compute grid for the jobs that are being terminated. Now, I know this is not easy to do, as they have no automated way to do this. Nonetheless, I insist because according to the logs, there is nothing that explains the behavior other than external intervention. This dialogue takes a while and goes through different persons at the customer company. Then silence for a while. Then I get a terse message that the problem is solved. I therefore inquire as to how it was solved. It turns out that umbrella control job, which was itself being run on the compute grid, was being submitted by the customer script to the grid with a very short runtime requirement. As soon as the runtime limit was hit, the grid engine would kill it. This would in turn trigger the control job, sending a termination signal to all the other jobs it had spawned to the compute grid, hence the failure of the whole flow to complete. Once they fixed that on their side, the problem obviously disappeared, and they were so sure our software was the issue, and getting pretty annoyed at me for not providing a fix. Oh, OP, it's absolutely the software's fault. Why couldn't it detect that the parameters weren't long enough and adjust accordingly? I mean, come on, why wasn't that coded in the first place? It really is too bad that you can't just code into your software an option that will just zap the person at the keyboard whenever they do something dumb. This story comes to us from Ramen Sommelier. My password should be good for 10 years. I work in IT as an engineer and the primary point of contact for vendor support. I set up remote access to various process control and SCADA networks across multiple domains that don't have domains trust, so we rely on DMZ jump hosts and VPN devices and Citrix to facilitate the needs. Rarely do we give vendors enterprise accounts as our VPN devices preclude that need, but today I worked with a vendor that had an enterprise account. For quick reference, Domain 1, D1, is Enterprise, and Domain 2, D2, is Process Control Domain. The initial issue was the vendor's D2 password had expired, so I reset the password and emailed him. About 2 hours later, he emailed back saying he couldn't log into the DMZ jump host to bridge between D1 and D2, and sent a screenshot that didn't make sense. I asked him to call me to work through it. It quickly became apparent that this vendor is confidently incorrect on nearly every aspect. Immediately, he tells me that they had difficulty in the past with his password, so we set him up with a special circumstance password that won't need changed for 10 years, and that my coworkers know about it. Well, there are only 2 of us, and I built the GPOs for D2, so I know that's incorrect, compounded by the fact that his initial issue was his D2 password expired, and that domain is only 8 years old, and his account is only 2 years old. He was adamant to the point that I shared my screen and showed him he was, in fact, wrong. I asked him to walk me through what he's doing. 1. Log into D1 Citrix storefront, correct. 2. Launch RDP session from Citrix, correct. 3. Type hostname of jump host, correct. 3A, drop down show options menu. 4. Type D1/username, incorrect. 5. Press connect, correct. 6. Type D1 password, incorrect. 7. Error. Okay, so you're trying to use a D1 domain and username and password to log into D2. He immediately cut me off. Yes. No. This is how I've always done it. That's not possible. You're trying to authenticate a D1 username and password through a D2 domain controller. They don't talk. D1/username doesn't mean anything to this machine. Then why can I access it from D1 Citrix? Because our firewall is configured to allow enterprise traffic. Look, it doesn't matter. Call it magic, but trust the magician. We went back and forth for a few minutes for me to finally share my screen, follow his process logging into Citrix, but he stops me. You're logging into Citrix with your account, that's not going to work. What do you mean? I don't know your D1 credentials, so I have to log in as me. This step is irrelevant, trust the process. I log into Citrix and launch RDP. I type the host name and press connect. He stops me again. You need to click the drop down and type my username. Trust the process. The RDP login shows D1/my username. See, it doesn't work like this. Holding back every bit of frustration, I ignore him. I click more choices and use a different account. Then type his D2/username and password and it connects without issue. The moment the desktop pops up, he says, "How did you do that? I didn't give you my password." I reset your password and sent it to you via email this morning. At your request, I still have that email, so I just copied and pasted your password. But you said you don't have my D1 credentials. Some more back and forth before I finally was able to walk him through logging in on his machine, only for him to rejoice with the fact that the connection failed. I check AD and see that he had a failed password and tell him as much. No, this is my password. It should be good for 10 years. No, the password I sent you in your email is your password, and it's good for the next so many days. We have never and will never alter our password rules to give vendors a password that's good for 10 years. This is your password until such and such date, at which point it will expire and we'll need to reset it again. Try logging in again and using only the password I sent you this morning. Logs in successfully. I'm gonna call colleague when he's back from PTO and get this mess sorted out. I'm sure he'll love that. For now, you're logged in. Can you access what you need? Yes. Click. I really don't understand how or why he thought he had 3 passwords, one of which didn't expire for 10 years. He's not some schmuck entry-level help desk guy. He's a systems integrator at a company we've worked with for the last 5 to 6 years. I've worked with some pretty difficult vendors, but I've never had someone so confidently tell me I'm wrong about something I built and work with daily. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Shifting Tech. It says, user stated that their accounts have been configured in a way that violates security policies. All accounts disabled, pending investigation. OP responded to this one and said, for what it's worth, I've built and modified the GPOs, and during the conversation, I double-checked group policy management on D2, and the password policy is under default domain policy. The vendor OU doesn't have any additional or supplemental GPOs for password policy. I know he's just pulling stuff out of his butt or confusing us with some other client. I don't know, it sounds to me like this guy would be really difficult to work with, so I'm guessing that somebody else, maybe another client, maybe even your coworker, just told them their password would be good for that long to get them off of the phone. Figured that got them off the phone and we can deal with the fallout later on. They just didn't have to deal with it themselves. It went to you, OP. If you enjoy daily Reddit stories, I encourage you to follow and add us to your favorites on whichever podcasting platform you enjoy the most. And if you're watching and listening on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and drop a like on the video. It really helps us out. I thank you for watching and listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.